Hello, hope all is well. I thought I'd share something today that, well, I'm kind of working on at the moment, which is this preset called Simply Metal. But I thought I'd share something that I found while messing around with the cab block. And that is looking at using, say, 1x12s instead of 4x12s. Now, the thinking here isn't really groundbreaking. It's sort of like the experiments I was doing with the 1x4, which I did a video on, which I'll link up here. And the thing here is I was just going through the different kind of cabs to see what they sounded like, and then stumbled on some 1x12s, which I think really sound cool, especially for metal, but it's not something that you typically think to use. Now, typically when we dial up a preset, this is essentially my main Droga preset that I use for live and gigging, so tone-wise, but I use different cabs, Otto audio cabs. But for this preset, we're using Dynacabs, and I thought it'd be a good example to use to show how these different things sound. So typically on something like this, we'd load up, say, a 4x12. I've put in the recto slant dynamic, and this is what that sounds like. So yeah, gets the job done. And the thing here is that, well, typically when you're looking through the menu, we will go for, say, one of the 4x12s. But I would strongly suggest just going through all the different cabs that are on here in the Dynacabs. There's not that many, so it shouldn't take that long to go through. And then you can kind of find different tones, maybe a different, better, or whatever response to the sort of amps that you're used to using, and get a different tone out. So a quick tip. When we're in menus such as these, typically you'll select something else and it'll take you back to the previous screen. But using this sort of pin up here, so once we click that, it will pin that window open so that when we click on, say, different cabs here, that window won't go away. And the cool thing is we can also use the up, down, left, right keys on the keyboard to go through different cabs. So that makes things really quick. So this next example, all I'm going to do is I'm going to be going from that initial tone, so the recto slant, and going through various different cabs, so you have some idea how they sound. So the thing here is with, 1x12 compared to a 4x12, obviously the size is very different, and there's maybe less like boominess or heft down below. And typically in a mix, those are sort of things that you kind of like to control. And also when you're going out and playing live, you want to get something that's typically quite a balanced kind of tone that goes out to front of house, so it's more easily mixable with the rest of the elements. And so by doing this, so taking a 1x12, at least to my ears, it's sort of like balancing out and sounds a different way. And then there's less of that kind of boomy kind of bass that is more present in 4x12s. So now, for example, in the 1x12, the G12T-100, we can also then start moving the mic around and the distance to get different kind of tones. So you can do this with all cabs in dyno cabs, of course. And well, with the 1x12, since we like that bass tone, or I do at least, I can now move the mic around to find a kind of variation of that tone. Say I want more brightness, I'll move the position closer to the middle. And then in terms of distance, I guess that's the kind of, I don't know the right way of putting it. To me, at least, when playing around with it, I find that I prefer having it really close to the speaker because of the response. But again, these are things that I suggest you experiment with. You can also change the different mics. In this case, I'm going to stick to the dynamic one. I believe it's the 57, and we'll take it from there. Now the thing here is that with Droga, I play out stereo. So I've got 2 channels on the mixer, and it's also going out stereo to front of house. However, I'm not using like stereo widening sort of tricks or effects that you might do, say with a pitch detune. The enhancer block and chorus to some extent can do that, simply because that kind of relies on sort of delaying signals that are going through or going out to both speakers. And that kind of, for me at least, in doing the stuff that we play, which can sometimes be quite full on in terms of riffing, it kind of messes, at least to me, for like the really faster riffing stuff. So that's why I don't use it. And instead, I prefer to go for simply hard pan cabs going out to front of house and also to the in-ears, as I feel that gives the kind of best kind of big sound, and it works best for me. So with that in mind, we'll set up like a stereo sound using 1x12. So on the one side, we'll use 1x12 G12T-100, and on the other, I'm going to go for the deluxe verb, and then we'll tweak them so it sounds good together when they're hard panned. Now, my way of doing this, it's kind of very basic, because the thing I'm going for is essentially slightly different sounding cabs. They're kind of similar, but they're slightly different on both sides. So there isn't like a huge difference between the two sides, but they're slightly different. So we get a slightly wider or bigger kind of sound stage. And that way, when I'm using delays and things like that, there's no like huge difference between the two speakers on a PA. Now for the first speaker, which will be the 1x12 G12T-100, I'll be using dynamic 1. I have set this up before on one of the other channels, but in essence, I like the distance to be as low as possible, so 0, as close to the cab as possible. And then I basically check for the amount of brightness that I want out of the tone itself before hard panning it. So we'll listen to the G12T-100 and then deluxe verb by itself, and then we'll hard pan them and see how that sounds. So pretty happy with that. I might make some minor adjustments here and there, but the other tweaks that we can do are actually in the Mic Preamp page. So within the preamp page, we can select different preamp types, for example here, and we can add a bit of drive or saturation to the actual tone itself to add a bit more sizzle if we want it that way. And we also have this really handy tone stack so we can further add to the tone. But the cool thing here, what I like to do here is to get a bit more kind of sizzle or saturation out of what we have going on already by taking, say, one of the preamps, I'll put it in high quality mode because I've got CPU to spare, adding a tiny bit of drive to that. Let's set it around 2 and see how that sounds. So yeah, by using the tone stack, we can really push certain elements of the tone, which might be kind of handy to look into if you want to further tweak, or you're quite happy with the sound you got, but you want some minor adjustments. So instead of going into the amp block and then making tweaks there, you can sometimes get a bit more out of it by using, the Mic Preamp in this case, and using the tone stack. I will say for that the tone stack is active, you have to select a preamp type, so one of these. I tend to go for modern just because I kind of like what it does. And again, these are things to taste. You can put the drive up even more, a bit more saturation, or actually turn that down so you can actually get the tone stack and some of the preamp character without getting extra saturation or drive from the Mic Preamp circuit. Outside of that, I've got a simple low cut and a high cut. Low cut of 60 Hz, 12 dB octave, 8K, 12 dB octave, and these small dips around this area because of this guitar, this pickup. For some reason, there's more of a push in that area, which I think can benefit if I trim that down a bit, especially for live and say front of house. I will say that EQ has been on the whole time, so those values have been on the different cabs and what you were hearing until now. As for the preset itself, I will be doing like a proper look or deep dive into it and the tones I get from it in the coming weeks, so keep your eyes out for that. But the preset is already in my Ko-Fi downloads below. It's free or pay as you want. I really appreciate any donations that come through that way because these sort of things do take time to set up. In any case, I hope you got something out of that and hope to see you in the next video. Take care.